Jim Joyce is not here. I honestly have no idea where he is. We didn't catch up. I'm a little bit concerned here. I am sure he'll chime in and dial in into the Zoom. But anyway, so it's just me today, for now, at least. And without further ado, I don't want to spend too much time. I think it's a big day for digital therapeutics industry. We have Big Health that just raised 75, Peter Hames, Wheel.com, Michelle, congrats. But again, I will leave it to Health Tech Talks. Damn it, Jess, Matthew, I'm sorry. Health Tech Deals, the new rename. So congrats on that renaming. With that said, you know what? I'm gonna just let Alyssa in. Alyssa Jaffee joining us. Alyssa, welcome to The Shot.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you. We met face to face, believe it or not. At HLTH briefly in Boston.
Can you believe it? You exist outside of Twitter.
I know, it's crazy. And this is a first. By the way, you're kicking off season 9 of The Shot. And I was gonna say with us, but Jim is MIA. This is the first time in almost 90 episodes. So I know they just went public recently as a company, so there's lots of stuff going on, I'm sure. But hey, it's you and I, and Jim will join in as it comes. So typically, Jim and I kind of talk about very few deals and things that are happening in the industry. So before we do the intro, or before we go into that, I actually want our many listeners and viewers to get to know you, who you are, a little background. And Jim just texted he's joining in.
There we go.
So,
I was worried about him, so I'm glad.
I know. This is meticulously unproduced. We are recording already. Cool. All right, so start with, first of all, I'll buy ourselves some time. So we had the pleasure in the 8 seasons. We had Garber, who I know you and I are trying to get more Twitter friendly. We've attempted. We had the pleasure of having Lee on, and now yourself. So I think next we'll probably ask 7wire to sponsor. No, I'm kidding. We don't have any sponsorships for the show.
All our people. I love it. Just need Glen now.
We just need Glen, but I know you guys have some other awesome peeps. So we'll, depending on how far and how long we go with this, the shot. So anyway, let's not wait for Jim. Why don't you get started? I'm sure we'll get interrupted with him joining in and brushing his hair, but give us a little background and to our viewers, who is Alyssa? Your background.
Sure. So I'll give my professional and maybe a little personal. Professionally, I'm one of the 4 investing partners at 7wire Ventures. We can talk a little bit about our fund, and I'm happy to share more for us and our focus on digital health. And it looks like the man, the myth, the legend is joining now.
Yes, you made it. I was nervous for you, Jim. Nervous for you.
Oh man,
he was genuinely worried about you. So
you see the fire truck in the background here. So Alyssa, absolutely pleasure to meet you. And can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
I can.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So I knew I wanted Eugene to kind of warm up the conversation a little bit and kind of get it going and
as a true entrepreneur, let's massage this a little bit and make it what it needs to be. So perfect.
It's all about storytelling.
So Alyssa literally just started introduction.
Yeah,
awesome.
Of course. So I'm operator turned investor. So I used to launch enterprise technologies. I did solution selling, managed teams for the advisory board company, if you both know them, based out of DC, who later sold to Optum. Spent a lot of time there, loved my experience, and then left to go to business school, went to University of Chicago at Booth, where then I started transitioning to the investing side. So I worked for 2 smaller funds And then I did start my own company. I raised a small round, about $1 million for that company, but definitely had the VC pitching experience. Ended up transitioning to that board. We sold that company. And then I went more institutional investing. So I went to go work for the Pritzkers, for JB, who's now governor of Illinois, his brother, Tony, about 8 billion AUM, 3 asset classes. And then just over 3 years ago, left there to join the 7wire team as one of the 4 investing partners.
Awesome.
And personally, I live in Chicago. I have 2 boys. We live in the city. I'm actually expecting with my 3rd. So, you know, life is crazy over here. And we're running full steam ahead.
And are you finding out the 3rd?
No, we haven't found out for any of our kids. Yeah, man, it's
okay.
It doesn't matter, you know.
Is this our first expecting guest?
Yes. Yes.
85. This is really special.
Hopefully not the last, but it's been great. You know, I think for me, and just there's very few times that we actually get to be consumers of some of our companies, or you know, and in many ways we don't want to be, right? We don't want, you know, many of our companies focus on severe mental illnesses or material chronic conditions, and so, you know, this is one experience where I can very much relate as a consumer, but also think about it as an investor, and it's a pretty interesting experience to go through.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was following. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
No, I said the real question is, you know, what's Rob like to work with?
Well,
because I literally,
I shall never
partially
tell.
late for this meeting. I blame Rob.
You should. It's Robert's fault. So he's such a pleasure to work with. We have a fantastic team, and we're a small team. And I think for us, that's one of the ways and the reasons we function so well is we all have known each other for a really long time, and we have personal and professional relationships that we really trust each other. And even before the pandemic, we were all traveling so much that we were very comfortable making decisions remotely because of the relationships we had built. So it actually allowed us to ease into the pandemic a little bit more seamlessly than I think most folks were able to.
I wanted to kind of double click on one part of your experience where you said you raised $1 million, you kind of got to learn, you know, the pitching to VCs. What was kind of your takeaway from that experience pitching to VCs, and how you're, you know, now in your newer role or in the last couple of years, how you're adjusting to that, and what was that experience like?
Sure. It's so interesting to pitch to folks who now are colleagues of mine, right?
Right.
And I think for me, I actually, when I transitioned to venture, I did write a blog post called Lessons from the Dark Side about my experience raising capital as an entrepreneur and then transitioning to the venture capital side, and just the 2 different mindsets that I had. And to me, the biggest learnings, first of all, is just having empathy for the process, right? Where you think about your business every single second of every single day. You both know this.
Yep.
And
yep.
when you meet with VC, I think there's a way that VCs can portray their line of questioning, their knowledge, that doesn't undermine the fact that you've probably already thought about it. And I think one of the biggest frustrations I had as an entrepreneur, when I got asked questions or I was suggested things as if I had never once thought about it, as if the business I had built and spent every day thinking about, it just happened to cross their mind.
Yeah.
I don't think though at the time I really gave credit to what is pattern recognition. And it's hard to see, you know, when you're building one thing versus we constantly on the venture side see folks building thousands and thousands of companies. There is a very different perspective. One isn't better or worse. It's just, I think a lot of it is about messaging and how, as an investor, can I communicate some of the learnings or some of the insights I've seen, because I have breadth and not depth anymore, right? Somebody who has the depth and doesn't have the breadth. So ultimately, I'd say probably 90+% of the folks were great. There was definitely a lot of people, not a lot, there were some people who I wouldn't do business with again because of how I think they treated me as an entrepreneur. And you know what, this business is long and life is long. And at the end of the day, we're all people, and that we care about just being treated with respect. And we can all disagree, right? I can think that you have an amazing business, but not invest for 100 different reasons.
Right.
But my job is to make sure that you know that I respect the work that you've done and what you've built. And hopefully you respect my position that not every company is going to be the right fit for me. Frankly, very, very, very few of the companies that pitch me are going to be.
Right. It's a tough, the dynamic. Go ahead, Eugene.
No, I just started to say, it's not that there's an aversion in the word pitch. I mean, it's a normal world, but like, to me, we're all human beings, and whether you're selling something, you're conversing, you're trying to solve a problem, it's a conversation, right? And so I get the whole pitching component, but when like literally, if you meet a VC, like I've had this couple of pitch to me. Well, it's not about a pitch. Let's have a discussion on what we're trying to build, how we're trying to build it, how we've thought about things and not thought about things. And we can still do that in that 20, 30-minute period, but forget about the slides, put them away. Let's just have a discussion, right? So that's kind of a little bit of a premise on this. And it sounds like you kind of went through some of that when doing the $1 million raise. Yeah,
I feel like it's the balance is, can you be a really strong storyteller in a way that doesn't feel so artificial? And someone saying pitch, like go dance for me, right? Like it's just you're like, whoa. And instead,
hey, we do what we're gonna do, because sometimes we gotta dance, we dance.
Shuffle, backflips.
That's how you raise capital, right there. No, but I think that there's an element of the other extreme where some entrepreneurs are so wed to the deck that they have to tell the whole story.
Right.
And you only have 30 minutes. You're going to spend 2 to 4 minutes on people joining Zoom, shoot it. So, okay, now you have 26 minutes and they go for 24 minutes straight. And in reality, what it should be is, hey, let me tell you our story and my story, maybe in the first 5 or 7 minutes. And then I'll pause, and then we can dive into any place that you want to go. And it's really difficult. It's challenging when you live and breathe the story every day to take yourself out of it and recognize like not every piece of the story has to go in the upfront. It's like in an interview when somebody says, tell me about yourself, right? Can you tell a very cohesive, compelling story that doesn't take up 24 minutes to tell your story? And by the way, we've lived long lives. That should take up more than that.
Right. No, it's a trick. Like I think, one of my kind of lessons, and I just learn more and more, and I get taught it, and then sometimes I violate the rules myself. But it's what Eugene said is I'm talking to my team that's describing our product. I'm like, we're not selling anything, so we're not selling anything. Just go in and describe the product, describe who you are, and see if they want to talk about it. You know what I mean? If they, like in kind of look for, and then really quickly ask them, once I've described it to you, do you think this fits into what you're trying to do? Or, you see a place for it, or, tell me where you want to go with it. And if you get to that, it's like magical, because then I think it's trust, right? It's a trusted conversation versus I'm going to spin something to you. I'm going to trick you into something, on either side. I'm going to trick you into taking my capital, or I'm going to trick you into buying my product or investing in my company. Whereas it's like, it's a foundation, right?
Listen, we're all.
I will just say, I love storytelling. Like, I think it's so powerful, and particularly in the investing side, like this isn't even selling a product, right? This is a marriage. This is, you're looking for someone who's going to sit on your board for 5 to 7 years. And so the dialogue that you have is very different. And many entrepreneurs, I think what they forget is the VC isn't in control and shouldn't be in control in that conversation. It should be the entrepreneur, right? You should be asking impact questions. You should be guiding the dialogue. If a VC takes you off course, bring them back on course the same way you do in a sales meeting. And a lot of that sometimes gets forgotten just because of the nature of like how you're supposed to feel in a pitch setting.
I was going to add a little bit, and I remember this discussion Chrissy Farr started a while back on, like, people were asking how to pitch a journalist, right? And kind of you can equate pitch a journalist, pitch a SVP somewhere, pitch a VC. At the end of the day, we're human beings, and it's not about pitching. It's being helpful it's, you know, it's putting your best forward to help individuals, because, you know, VCs, you guys have LPs, you have commitments, you also need to deliver. How can we as an entrepreneurs help you as a VC as well to hit your milestones and goals, as long as we fit into it, right? So it's a conversation, and journalists are human beings, VCs are human beings.
That. But at the end of the day, like, it's not about it. What I'll say is, like, we'll be fine in that.
No, I
want to, you know, I don't want to make this about like oh, poor VC, we have to manage our LPs, right? I think that's our own. Everyone's got a boss. But I think you're absolutely right of having the knowledge of everybody's prioritization, of everybody's interests, right? The more you best understand that, right, the more you pitch to the right person. Like, you know, I used to be at a very large generalist fund, and I did almost exclusively healthcare. And, you know, a friend of mine did most of at the fund. One of my colleagues did mostly like industry 4.0. And if folks would reach out to me for that, like, I was the wrong person, right? Or we get pitched. Like the other day, I got a LinkedIn message for 7 Wire, somebody pitching a real estate deal. And I'm like, if you just read one thing I've ever done or the fund has ever done, right? So I think that there is an element of matching to optimize success too.
Agreed. So before we let typically our guest in, Jim and I kind of touch on some of the deals, and I actually want to hear, you know, today I think we saw, you know, Michelle from Wheel.com announce 150 mil. So congrats. She's been building a great business. Peter Hames and team at Big Health, 75 mil. And those are not even the really crazy numbers, and probably we don't know the valuations. I don't think they disclosed it. I'm really trying to get into VC's head where, yes, it's a multi-trillion healthcare economy. There's a lot to be squeezed, but, you know, what are the entrepreneurs really signing up for? You know, just love to hear, not these specific 2 deals, but some of the larger raises, and getting a little bit into your head and how you think about them.
Sure. So I think you actually hit the nail on the head of asking entrepreneurs, what are you signing up for? And I think that the problem is a lot of entrepreneurs don't actually think about it and take advantage of the momentum, which I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but there's very different types of companies that you can build. And oftentimes on the path to building the megacorn, unicorn, decacorn, I saw triceratops the other day. I was like, what? I just, on that path, sometimes businesses outgrow people. And so the question is, are you trying to build that kind of a business? And okay, if the business outgrows you, are you trying to build a business for optionality, right? Where you could potentially build a multi-billion-dollar business, but maybe it's also great to get acquired for $500 million, which, by the way, is a great outcome. And then if you go all the way to the beginning, as you think about folks even starting this journey and raising money, I always give this example. If a business sells for $20 million, okay, if you own a business and that sold for $20 million, you own 100%, $20 million, that is life-changing money. That would be an absolute amazing opportunity. I would be pissed, right? That wouldn't fly in my world, right? Yeah. That would be a real letdown. And that's where our incentives aren't aligned. And so the real question is, why are you building this? What are you in this for? And it's not just capital. There's so much more that goes into building these companies. And so those that take big rounds, I commend them. I want them to have moonshots. The market cap is there. Like, healthcare can take it. We are growing. And this whole notion of, like, you know, all these companies won't be successful, maybe, probably, but we can build. We've proven, Livongo, Teladoc, $18.5 billion businesses and counting. So I think it's there. It's just the question of, does it always have to be? And just because you take certain capital initially doesn't mean that has to be the preferred path for every single company.
Yep. When you are talking to these, like you talk about the preferred path, like everything in life, there's a cursing and a bless to it. You know, what did they say? Like, you know, medicine is based on, a cure, the difference between a cure and a poisonous dose, like, so we look at the success with Livongo, the success with Teladoc, which obviously, your fund and your partners are tied into. That's such an outstanding success. How do companies, do sometimes companies feel like overwhelmed by that success? Like decided it's like, it's fantastic because we can point to this huge success and like, hey, that anything's possible. So it has all that upside to it and capital raising and model for how to build the company. So it's all those great things. Is there any downside to that comparison being so present in your kind of world?
I think on the whole, folks are excited about it. One, because it gives a comp, right? It gives an analog for aspirations to build something like that, and that you can if you want. Two, it creates another acquirer. You don't have to be acquired by the same three health plans that are the only people that acquired businesses back 10 years ago, right? There's a lot more companies now that actually have the cash, that have the market cap or the equity to absorb and acquire many, many really interesting healthcare companies. I wouldn't say the downside. Glen Tullman is an amazing person, an amazing force, and frankly, a wonderful colleague and person to work with. But he is his own uniqueness, right? Not everybody can or should be Glen. I'm not, that's for sure. And so I think that some businesses are set out to be built like that. When we built Transcarent, which obviously is Glen at the helm, that was set out to build an absolute moonshot. Like there was no interim step. But a lot of entrepreneurs, I think they build to solve a specific problem, many of whom had their own issue with that problem.
Yep.
Right? Many of them were focused on some kind of verticalized solution for chronic condition management or something they've experienced. And I just want to make sure that they take check and milestones of being a maker of their own luck, right? Master of their own destiny. That if you build a really compelling business and the capital that you raise is at an appropriate price that everybody would be happy with a number of different outcomes, then you can have really compelling outcomes along that journey. And you don't have to necessarily shoot for becoming the next Livongo every single time. And the market pressure pushes a lot of folks to that. And it's okay, but you've got to know what you're signing up for. Like, I think it's hard sometimes to see the forest through the trees.
Right.
Maybe just one other sort of follow on from me on this, right? And when you're building any business, it's about people, right? I mean, sure, you can have capital investments, scaling, marketing, but a lot of it needs to attract the right talent. And you leverage Glen. Like, I think you probably ask almost anybody in the industry that would love to work with Glen and learn and be part of the. But again, right, and not calling out any last 6 months of deals, a lot of these founders people don't know necessarily, right? And you raise, and I'm picking a random number, 50 mil, and you don't need to build a factory, you don't need to build a supply chain, but it's really talent, marketing, building out some operations. Well, guess what? Building out operations, you need people. So I'm kind of like looking at a lot of this back to the signing up part. How do we as a digital health and care community, right? I mean, there's limited talent still. That's a big challenge, and you're signing up for a large round to build it out, and you can't get the people. So I'm curious, as you have a number of portfolio companies. I would assume talent is like number one key component of all these fundraisers and scaling.
Yeah, I mean, the war on talent is fierce right now. That is for sure. And I'm sure you both see it. We see it across our portfolio. And one of the biggest things too, you talk about, you're right, as these companies grow and scale, you're not always working with the founder. So what's the culture that you're building? So the folks they are working with are really compelling, and they are getting those lessons learned, and the kind of drip culture down, that same philosophy, you're still getting it, even if you're not spending every single day with the likes of Glen. And many of our companies, I'll give them a lot of credit. Like, they've been super intentional about it. It's been really hard in the pandemic. Like, startup culture is built on this crazy energy that you get from all being in the office and like frenetically running around, and like the house is on fire every day. And it's just different being virtual. But at the same time, there's a lot of benefits about a remote first environment. Our companies are now recruiting people. I mean, this is part of why the war on talent is so hard. You don't have to live in the Bay Area anymore, right? Or your company doesn't have to be based there to get amazing talent. And we've been saying this for a long time. Like, Chicago was one of was actually Livongo's biggest office. We had so much talent, and it was more economical for the company. And it was a great hub for a lot of people to come work. We still had the Mountain View office, we had an office here, office in Denver. I mean, it became kind of like a nice opportunity to create different hubs and expand what it meant to service, you know, different types of employees. Ultimately, yeah, it's kind of a good time to be an employee of a digital health company, because there's a lot of capital and they're pay up for you to come and be the team. I think those that are good,
we should apply for jobs, Eugene. We should stop setting up companies and go apply for jobs.
Hey, Marina hired me when I left there. So, you know,
I'm not sure I'm employable.
I'm thankful
if my
to my
application
wife.
comes in. If my application comes in, Alyssa, you might ignore it.
I'm not sure. Jim, with our next,
I got some toddlers that are great. If you guys want to take them.
Before we move into, because I'm curious, I mean, obviously, you know, we chat with Rob, sync up with Lee once in a while, right? But like I personally have not in a while. And I'd love to, before we get into the thesis, maybe I want to ask one other question. I saw Deena, I know she's a friend of yours, and Deena Shakir, she tweeted something yesterday or today, and I love that kind of question, that the job of VC, it's a fine balance between optimism and paranoia, right? I loved it, right? Because I would argue it's not only it's any decision-making role, but I think it is unique in a VC. How do you look at it? I don't know if you saw her tweet or if you responded or not, but curious.
I did. Deena is absolutely amazing. She has become such an amazing friend of mine. And like, this is the crazy world of the pandemic. She and I became super close with a group of women, all doing the same thing, all in similar life stages, remotely. Like, we didn't even meet. We've probably been friends for 6 months before we met in person for the first time. And so it's just pretty magical to have those kind of opportunities. And, but I did, so I saw it, and here's sort of my philosophy on venture, a couple of things. The first is, I tend to be more of an optimist as a person. So I do tend to think about the world we can build versus the world that we can't. And ultimately, I think venture is made up of what I'll call pickers and makers, right? I'll tell you all the reasons why I think I'm a good picker, but at the end of the day, it's about being a maker. Like, our philosophy at Seven Wire is healthcare is really hard, and it is really, really hard to build companies. And it takes a very long time with a lot of smart people around the table. And so what can I do and we do to really become makers of our own luck and help drive growth for our companies? And that's where we really spend a lot of time. And ultimately, you know, if you think about the universe of optimism and paranoia, we're thematic investors. And so for us, we are very proactive. We actually look at the landscape, we look at the market, we identify the white space, and we go out and try and find the company that's solving that problem. Yep. If nobody's solving it, we'll start it. We have no problem starting the business. So it's a little bit, it's atypical, right? There's always a level of paranoia, a bit, and I will be curious how both of you feel. Like, frankly, ideas are worth nothing. Execution is everything. So if someone else goes and does it better, shame on me, shame on us. Like, we should have moved faster. We should have executed better. Yeah. And so that's kind of where my paranoia sits. It's not like who's going to start something else. It's like, who's going to build something else faster, right? And better. And let's make sure that we put all of our resources against being makers.
Yeah, I'm completely paranoid with an optimistic exterior.
So
well,
very well said, as usual, Jim Joyce. So you mentioned thematic investors. So maybe just let's spend a few minutes. Kind of, what are you guys tracking in the market? What are you looking at? Kind of the themes, and would love to hear that. And I think the entrepreneurs that watch the show would love it too.
Of course. So thank you for the question. And for us, we're quite thoughtful about how we view the world. And the overarching true north for us is a thesis that we call the informed, connected health consumer. So everything that we do is all about how we can help people to become better stewards of their health, and how we can think about healthcare technology and services meeting people where they are. So at the end of the day, if someone's not getting access to their own information, connecting into the system to improve their health outcomes, it's not a fit for us. So happy to sort of double click there if of interest. There are a number of sub-theses, so areas that we do really like and areas that we look at. One of the biggest, verticalized solutions for chronic condition management. Obviously, Livongo falls there. Another company called Zurigo for people with chronic skin conditions is there as well. We look at mental health and behavioral health. So I spent a lot of time in severe mental illness, a business called NoCD. We've invested in for obsessive compulsive disorder. We did Brightline, which is for pediatric behavioral health. We also look at vulnerable populations. So we have a number of companies that sell into managed Medicaid. Consejo Sano is a good example there. Really focused on building a communications platform for multicultural populations. We look at women's health. We're actually hatching a company in women's health right now, more for the earlier stages of a woman's journey. We look at health events. So I think about MSK or oncology, right? We did Recovery One. We did an oncology business called Jasper Health, really focused on the specific maybe health things that will happen or occur in somebody's life.
Adam is awesome, by the way. I met him years ago. So I'm sure all the other founders rock too.
Pellegrini, the CEO of Jasper Health, he came from CVS. He lives in Idaho and lives like the best, most interesting juxtaposition of a life. He is a wonderful human and an incredible operator. And where we were very lucky, we actually recruited him as part of our condition of financing that business. And probably the last bucket is aging in place. So we did also hatch a business called Home Thrive, focus on supporting family caregivers for their aging loved ones. But that's a big component. There's a number of other places like we'll take deep dives in and we'll continue to explore. But I'd say for 22, those are kind of the main opportunities for us.
Not to pander here, but like, thank God you guys are around. like there's some big problems you're tackling, you know what I mean? Like if you can make me younger, you can get products to me in healthcare that are more consumer orientated. Like I love the whole, the Livongo story. So you guys are, it doesn't seem like there's any shortage of ambition here.
Well, thank you. And thank you. You guys are around. I mean, look, I'll say it a million times, like a broken record. There are way easier, faster, better ways to make a lot of money in this world. And we're all in healthcare for a reason, right? We're mission driven. What do we want to get out of bed every morning to do? And this is what we do every day. And there are enough problems in this industry to last multiple lifetimes. And for us, we dedicated ourselves to a swim lane of really where we want to build, what we think the true north should look like. And that's where we focus.
That's why we don't just buy NFTs and resell them, right? Which you may as well, but you know, that's I personally don't get.
I'm working on creating a really awesome NFT, guys. Just you know,
awesome. We can't wait of this. You know, of this image. There you go.
Yes, exactly. How did you know? It was the original shot of this Zoom.
I've been cursed. I've been cursed my whole life with not making money quickly.
So before we get to Jim's, big question as usual at the end, I do have one. So we talked about all the money pouring in. We talked about amazing entrepreneurs that are building stuff. Yet, again, I don't have kind of solid data on it to talk about. But you know, are we seeing real measurable outcomes, and more so even on the health consumer perspective? Is it really relieving our health burden, right? Like, are people kind of like, I'm just thinking, you know, for everyone back when I used to live in the US, like, it's kind of dreading going to a doctor, figuring out the insurance thing, this, that, right? I mean, all of that. Like, are we really seeing this? And this is a question, I guess, for both of you guys. It's not just, but Alyssa, if you can take a stab at it.
Yeah, look, I think there's probably a couple of ways to answer this. The first is, it's sort of yes and no. On the no side, this is why we built Transparent. And self-insured employers were using, I think Wall Street Journal quoted on average 16 different solutions. Their costs were increasing, their outcomes weren't getting any better. We had to do something, right? We had to say, we're going to find a way to drive better consumer engagement. We're going to really help to best understand what your employees need. And we're going to go at risk. So we're truly going to roll up our sleeves and share the cost. And so when you look at things like that, the answer was no, we were a long way to go. On the other side of, I wrote a piece in TechCrunch about this because a lot of companies were getting frustrated. Like, I'm being asked to show true ROI, right? And it's really hard for an early stage business to do that. You need access to claims data, a lot of them, right? You need health actuaries to do it. I mean, it's to show the true cost reduction, and particularly those, I think about some of our populations, 90% of them have a comorbidity. And so they're getting treatment from all different types of places. And then there's the attribution question. And so we thought about, like, how do we distill it down? What does that actually mean to show, if you aren't yet getting access to your claims data, how can you show that you're making progress? And it's really about the experience that you're driving. And you hit the nail on the head, Eugene, of saying, like, I don't even want to go because of the process. And so how do you make the experience so much better than the status quo? How do you say that this is something that we genuinely are going to meet people where they are? That when you get diagnosed with cancer and you have 5 new doctors and it's a life-changing diagnosis and you have no idea what to do, and they give you a piece of paper, right? Who's going to be there with you? And oh, by the way, great news, people aren't dying from cancer, but now it's becoming a chronic condition. So you're going to have this for a decade that you're going to have to deal with. And so there becomes just, I think what digital health is doing, and we're a long way from being successful because of how complicated and complex our system is, but it is setting us on that journey, that we are encouraging people. Think about preventative healthcare. Like, finally everyone's saying, oh yeah, this is a good thing. But like the attribution on ROI for preventative healthcare is a little bit tough. But now we're saying, okay, if we can actually get people to engage with the system, right? That they engage and the system engages back, that is a good thing. And we know that it is. And so we have to make some of these steps in order to ensure that the ROI case is then made on the back end.
Yep.
Jen,
well said.
To hear your thoughts as
well. Yeah, well, my head's racing when I listen to you talk about that, because one is I'm just thinking about this whole idea of these conditions, these acute conditions becoming chronic, long-term, like this idea of cancer being a chronic condition, and the role that digital healthcare has to play, in that system, and the sheer complexity of that, the burden of that. So I'm not going to spoil your answer by adding anything else to it.
It's so interesting. Like, we spent a lot of time in, younger, we're looking at kind of Gen Z women and college age women, and they'll go seek mental health support when they're on campus, and they'll basically be told, they'll do one visit, it'll take 5 weeks to get a visit. And then they'll one visit and they'll be told, thanks, but you're not a harm to yourself or others, so we can't see you anymore. Right? And like, these people are paying for healthcare. Like 93% of college are insured. That is not okay. That is not, if that's the status quo, we surely can do much better than that. And that's my push, is like, I want us to build a different world, but I also want us to recognize and understand that ROI, NoCD is a great example. Like, no one was even in the claims data for OCD because it was so misdiagnosed or undiagnosed. And so they had to find these people, right? Like, the payers didn't know what they were. They were showing up as having depression or anxiety or substance use disorder. And like, this was uncovering like a whole population of people that were suffering in silence. And so it's really about, I think, just digital health can do a lot of things that the incumbents can't do. And the partnership opportunity becomes quite exciting.
No, absolutely. Listen, we're gonna, I think, go to the final question that Jim Joyce asked at the end. So I'll pass it on. I'll hand it off to you with the big.
Well, I'm so excited to have met you here today, and sorry it almost didn't happen. I was, but okay. So just imagine yourself, or imagine this young, talented female entrepreneur walking out of a cold Chicago office after having invented a digital health application to help chronic cancer sufferers live healthy lives for a long time. And she's just raised €1 million from a really exciting venture fund. If you're looking at that young entrepreneur, what advice would you give her?
Oh, great question. So many things that I'm sure you both have as well. But the one thing I like to say to folks who are old enough to hear this, or this entrepreneur is, there's no such thing as strangers. Life is long and it's complex, and there's a lot of people in this world that can help you. And frankly, people will come back out of the woodwork if you've connected and maintained that relationship decades later. And somebody that you knew that lived on the street from you growing up could now be an executive at CBS, right? And it's just be thoughtful in your interactions. Even if someone isn't immediately helpful or immediately the right person that you're trying to get to, be thoughtful about what that person can be for the long run.
Love it.
Awesome.
Beautiful advice.
Beautiful advice.
Thank you very much for joining. And we also hit a couple of new news, right? And by the way, Jim, I know you weren't on, but this is the official kickoff of season 9. So it's Alyssa and I got to kick it off, and then you joined in. So I may switch partners on you.
So when season 9 is super succhaving, you're welcome. And
yes.
So season 9, we improved it a little bit by by having a better co-host.
With that, the millions of listeners and viewers, hit subscribe if you're not subscribing and just happen to it, or pass it on. And thank you very much.